Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Shoots at webs, climbs up walls, catches bad guys just like flies. Look out, I don't remember the lyrics of Spider-Man. This is the vlog for September 15th, 2018. And yesterday, I picked up Spider-Man, the 2018 video game from Insomniac. And then I didn't play it. So I had intended to buy the game yesterday morning and then play it when I got home from work. I didn't do that because when I got up in the morning and I turned on my PS4 for the first time in probably 2 months, there was an update. So I had to do that, and then I was ready to get the game, and then of course the game had to download, and it was downloading while I was waiting to play it instead of while I was at work, which was the initial plan. So I didn't play it last night. I played World of Warcraft at the guild meeting with my friends. That was a lot of fun. And then this morning I got up and I didn't play it. Because the Warframe dev stream had gone on yesterday, I had intended to also have my Twitch account on to watch it so that I would get the Twitch drop. That didn't work out because, first of all, I was at work. The idea was to turn on the Twitch account before I went to work and watch it. But I did it on Thursday because I thought that was when the dev stream was. And then I was going to go and log in last night to see what I got as a Twitch drop, and I didn't get anything. And like all times when they do a dev stream, they had Gift from the Lotus, so Orokin Catalyst and Orokin Reactor, and I didn't log in until this morning, and it was like 11 o'clock, and the missions were only up for 6 minutes when I logged in, so I was only able to get the Catalyst, the Reactor. But I got the Reactor for Nezha. Nezha is this very interesting frame. He's based on a Chinese deity who is gender fluid. Nezha will switch between a male and female form as he sees fit. He's a playful sort of trickster deity. It's so interesting how many different cultures have gods of trickery. There's Loki in Norse mythology. There's the coyote in a lot of American First People mythologies. There's Anansi, is a bit of a trickster in some African myths. And then there's Nezha. And he's a lot of fun to play. I wish that I had picked him a long time ago, but I picked him up today specifically because of the rework that went in to coincide with the release of his deluxe skin. So cool. I also picked up Revenant, which is the newest Warframe that I was really looking forward to, and he's not very good. Well, at least he doesn't really suit my playstyle. He does some... He's sort of like Nyx. He mind controls or he enthralls enemies, and then they can do stuff for him. They can fight for him. When they die, they turn into little fountains of energy that hurt enemies. And as they hurt other enemies, more enemies become enthralled. But, as cool as that sounds, your attacks can still damage them, so you can enthrall a couple of dudes and then just kill them. And they won't enthrall anyone else. So it's not like the Necromancer from Diablo 2 or Diablo 3 for that matter, where you're raising enemies from the dead and then firing through them, using them sort of as a living shield. So, yeah, not exactly what I was looking for. But Nezha is really cool and really easy to level in survival missions. So he's already level 21. And his deluxe skin is fantastic. Another beautiful behind, much like the Nidus Frike skin. I think they both had the same designer. So, good stuff. But Spider-Man. Okay, I want to talk about Spider-Man. Because I finally, just like a couple hours ago, actually started playing Spider-Man after sort of playing Warframe for way too much of the day and going, I've just done this already for 400 hours. Let's do something new. So I picked up Spider-Man. Insomniac Games is the creator of this game, and it is so unlike any of the other games I'm aware of they're making. These are the guys that created Spyro, But they're, I think, at this point more famous for Ratchet and Clank, which I've never played, but I've heard people rave about them, say they're very, very fun, very enjoyable, very enthralling and engaging. But this Spider-Man game is so unlike what I'm familiar with from this studio. It is very much in the same vein as like Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City and Arkham Knight. And the combat feels very similar, but it's very Spider-Man. You use webbing to shut down guys with guns who are quite dangerous and have killed me a lot. I'll get back to that in a minute. The way you zip around the city feels so good. A lot of people will talk about Spider-Man 2, the Spider-Man video game, for the second Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, as being one of the high points for licensed games. It was a lot of fun. It was very well made. It felt very good. And it was a lot easier than this game. I remember Batman being tricky because you were expected to deal with thugs with guns in very specific circumstances so that you could survive a melee fight with them. I have died as Spider-Man at least a dozen times in the opening mission of this game. I have it set to middle difficulty, which is the amazing difficulty. There's friendly difficulty for the more casual crowd, which I think I might actually be part of at this point. There's amazing, which is the standard difficulty, and there's spectacular, which is a hard mode. Friendly, of course, is a reference to Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which I believe is a comic line involving Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man is the original comic when it became a standalone comic back in the 60s. And Spectacular Spider-Man is a parallel run that was simply different stories by different authors and different artists. When I worked at a game store that also sold comics, I believe Spectacular was running back then, and that was 14 years ago. I'm a fan of Spider-Man. I wouldn't say he's my favorite. My favorite comics are probably always going to be X-Men, because of the dynamic of people who have powers but are trying to figure out ways to coexist and sometimes pretend they had no powers at all. I always found that to be a much more interesting sort of dynamic and sort of interaction between characters than just, I'm a superhero, I fight crime, I stop bad guys, I try and keep my secret identity from being troublesome, but it doesn't always go very well. In fact, it never, ever, ever does. No superhero who has a secret identity has ever had that go smoothly. Because eventually, one writer's like, what would happen if somebody blew the secret identity thing? I'll write that. So, aside from being gorgeous, this game is very interesting for a few reasons. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's Spider-Man post-high school. He's actually working for a scientist that you will probably recognize the name of pretty quickly, but I'm not gonna talk too much about that. But Spider-Man had this amazing run where he was a science teacher, because science was actually his greatest passion outside of crime fighting. The photography thing at the Daily Bugle was a way of paying bills, but Peter Parker wasn't really great at it, except that he could set up cameras and then swing by them to get amazing pictures of Spider-Man that he could sell for money to a newspaper. Speaking of which, J. Jonah Jameson is in this game, but he's no longer the editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle. Now he has... it's either a talk radio show or a podcast. And it suits him really well. And that's sort of the whole... It's not unlike the Ultimate Spider-Man series, which sort of reimagined Spider-Man, but updated it and accelerated some of the storytelling. So within the first 100 issues, Spider-Man had faced off against all of his most famous foes. And in some ways, it sort of mirrored the movie plots, but in other ways, it went in completely different directions. For example, the Green Goblin was actually a mutated monstrosity, not unlike the Hulk or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, instead of just being a madman with a mask and a little thing that he could fly around on. This game is so neat, and it's something that Spider-Man really needed right now. It's going to capitalize on the success of Spider-Man Homecoming, and it has a very similar vibe, similar tone, but lots of little different details. And it's very respectful of the comic source material, drawing a lot of inspiration directly from the comics, and maybe less from the movies or the TV shows that have come out in the years. And I've been talking about it for about 5 minutes now. This video's gone for 10 minutes. I can't wait to go back and play more. So, I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.